Christoph Tronar, cinematographer for Baby Reindeer. Were you aware of the one-man show or Richard Gadd at all before the series?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't until Veronica, the director, told me about it, that she got the script. Yeah.
So what did she tell you? Because I know you guys are friends. So was it just like, hey, I got this, I might get this show and I would love for you to DP it?
Yeah, yeah, I remember she called me and said like, well, oh, I know what it was. So she didn't know whether she could interview me for it.
Okay.
She told me about it, and because by the time she was interviewing for it, I have taken part as a second unit director of photography on this big show called 1899.
Mhm.
And she wasn't sure if she could invite me for the interview, but then somehow um, seeing the other DOPs and credits there, so some people she was, that they were suggested for it. She said, well, she would love to interview me, and yeah, this is how it all started. And yeah, no, like she did. She just they gave me a script, and then it was, once I've read it, it was something. Uh, I think it was one of the best scripts I've read so far in my life. Really, you couldn't really get away from, like, get out of that story. It was so interesting. Yeah.
Did they give you the whole series, scripts for the whole series, or just one episode?
No, I only at the beginning I got just one episode.
Oh, wow. So you had no idea where it was going.
Well, she kind of gave me an insight to it, but they only gave me one episode to read, and then when I was interviewing, they kind of told me where it's going, but I only got to read first episode. But I mean, based on the first episode and knowing then that the scripts were sort of at finished stage, because in TV, no, that's not always the case. Uh, I mean, I was like, if this episode is like that, I'm only dying to know what's gonna happen after. So yeah, and the first episode was pretty much as it is now in as you watch it.
Oh, wow. That's not often the case either. So,
Yeah, probably,
so
yeah.
did you interview with Richard at all during this process?
Yeah. So because we kind of, I've worked with Veronica years ago on like shorts and music videos. We kind of knew each other. So when I and we had a conversation, but when I went into the interview, yes, there was Richard and Ed, one of the exec producers, and Matthew, the producer. So yeah, it was kind of the almost the whole gang involved. Yeah, from the start.
So once you were officially on board, what were those discussions like with Veronica and Richard about developing the aesthetic for the show? Because it is so specific, and I love how it feels so claustrophobic and hectic because Donnie's
Yeah,
life is a mess,
yeah.
So what were those discussions like?
I mean, so like from the start, when you read it, it was, all driven by this voiceover that also that was pretty much the same in the theater play. Um, and we knew it would be kind of first person point of view story. The point of view really matters because it's Donnie in the center. He wants to be in the center well, he's in the center of the story, but also the whole show is about him actually finding his way to finally to getting some exposure. So uh, yeah, the initial conversations were around how do we portray that, how we frame him sort of always in the middle and put Martha as this intruder and create this sort of unsettling, intense feeling of well, first Martha's intrusion, but also kind of this hectic world, this hectic world of Donnie. And also, I remember when at the very early stage of prep, I listened to the audio track from the theater play, and that kind of had this very distinct dynamic and pace of Richard's voiceover. And when I heard it, it kind of felt like you kind of knew where you were going with it in a way. That's gonna be this kind of like intense, fast pace, relentless, I don't know, a journey or relationship or whatever, between Donnie and Martha. I mean, a relationship of a kind, of a very unusual kind.
Mhm. Is that how you develop those like dolly push in and pull out shots? Because there are so many of them, like a lot of them, even in like montages when she's just like walking through the bar and we just like push in on her and it's so frantic, right? It's just like you said, it's like an intrusion. It's like she's here.
Yeah, no, I mean it was always, I think, the sort of the push-ins and uh, from sort of non-montage side of things were sort of instinctive between me and Veronica and watching rehearsals, but all of these, well, but there was also those kind of like more developed movements when we see Martha intruding the pub and sort of visual passages with the Richard's voiceover. Yeah, that was kind of deliberately planned in advance, quite meticulously at the stage of, I don't know, location scouting, and we kind of thought about it. And obviously we're both fans of Magnolia. Uh, so it's yeah, I'm sure there's that was definitely a reference for
An
some of the,
homage to Magnolia, of course.
yeah,
How can you not?
yeah. But yeah, obviously, uh, don't know if we got that perfect with it, but that was definitely on our mind.
hmm the lighting in the show is also so striking because there are a lot of scenes in dark rooms or dark spaces, and um, like the rooms are still illuminated, but often just by like one light or like two lamps, and you
Mm.
could still see everything. So how did you guys develop that aesthetic?
Uh, I guess it was. I mean, I kind of I presented like it's interesting because I think I presented at the beginning where I was pushing for this kind of quite gritty look for the show, because for me it wasn't really about making things neither pretty or there's nothing really in that world that is that in the world of that show that is pretty in ways. And then kind of we were trying to create, well, at least in my head it was trying to, as much as it is a very realistic show, to kind of create to kind of add a little bit of expressionistic element to it, to kind of somehow reflect the mood of the show in through lighting, especially when it moves into episode 4. Um, so yeah, it was, I think, kind of reacting to the story and uh, and yeah, and kind of making this shift from something that is starts as a comedy and then continues into almost a horror in episode 4. So yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question
I don't know.
fully.
You did. Yeah. Well, let's talk
Yeah.
about episode 4 because that is, like the pivotal episode here, and it's a flashback. And the first half is like, you know, hopeful, optimistic because he's in Edinburgh and he's trying to make it. And
Yeah.
then, like you said, it takes a dark turn. So, what was the prep like with that? And also, just what did you discuss the specific shots with Richard, especially with the more traumatic scenes like towards the end of the episode?
Yeah, I think at the very early stage of prep, we kind of presented this idea of how the visual language will shift from the beginning to an end, and also like that was quite evident in the material of how we want to portray episode 4 and where we're thinking of going with it. So yeah, Richard was on board from start, and he was really happy to he was kind of standing behind it from the start, and he was all for all the visual ideas, I think. Um, and then yeah, I guess with Edinburgh, the whole episode starts with like a sort of optimistic, airy uh space, and there's open space, and there's like a atmosphere of hope and optimism, and ends much sort of tighter and more claustrophobic in Darian's flat. So yeah, we kind of looked at some very, very dark examples of uh, TV and film and where it could go, and I think that was referenced from the start.
Mhm.
You know,
Well, one of the most beautiful shots in the whole series is in that episode after Darian drugs Donnie, and Donnie is just like laid out on a couch.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you push him on his face, and there's like light bathing him from the
Mm.
window above. So how did that shot come to be?
Well, it's actually interesting because I think throughout the prep we were talking about the idea of spotlight, and even in Donnie's voiceover in Baby Red, like in his words, he uses it a lot, as in kind of the spotlight, and also this desire for finally finding himself in the spotlight. But then kind of in the story, that spotlight takes different roles. Uh, as much as it is like literal during the comedy shows, it also somehow hints when Donnie looks at Martha in the pub, and Donnie walks in London on the street and kind of approaches the camera and appears more and more in light. And when in episode 4 we thought, okay, well, there is this street light outside, and we kind of never wanted to make the drag scenes over the top, but we thought, okay, well, if this street light, and I think the voiceover kind of suggests it, if this street light, when he takes all these drugs, then that kind of starts to appear more than what it is. And so we replaced the sort of the light with the same color, but much stronger, more spotlight character. And yeah, that was kind of motivation from the drugs, where he like almost sees that street light as a spotlight for himself,
Yeah,
and
it's
then
like a
obviously,
hallucination almost.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
uh, but he also has a sort of more because like when you get in and you kind of zoom in on when the camera tracks in on his face doesn't really look that. There's something weird happens there. I think we never, when we kind of knew what lens we want to use. We knew it's going to be wide. We knew it's going to be a spotlight, but it somehow created this kind of strange image, and with his face, it was quite unusual.
Yeah, I mean it's a beautiful shot. Well, I mean, what was your favorite frame or shot from the episodes you worked on? You did the first 4. Do you have a favorite one?
I mean, I think it's one of those sequences are definitely one of my favorite sequences from the show. I think episode 4, I just love the kind of the transition, and how suddenly from Donnie and Martha, it kind of goes into this more elaborate story that you actually get to look at those characters, and you see them in situations rather than constantly in the pub. I think, yeah, and also the shift was something I was really, really into. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, lastly, the show has been such a hit. Like, has that also been a surprise to you? I feel like it's been such a surprise to everyone involved in the show. Or did you feel like when you were making it, like this could be something special?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we always thought about about it as a more of a niche project and like a sort of indie show. I remember even like on set we were joking with one of execs, there's like some festival in Scandinavia might play it, you know. It will be very indie, you know, it will find its audience, but you know, it's gonna be very niche. So yeah, it was definitely a surprise
Yeah.
for
Definitely not niche now. So
yeah, definitely not niche now.
yeah. Well, Gustav, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time and
Thank
congratulations
you very
again.
much.
So.
Thank you.